so clear, it's not just money we mean when we talk about a richer writer's life. It's a richness in personal fulfillment, life experience, in knowing that you're helping businesses thrive, as well as your family and your community. It's a richness in confidence based on the depth of your skills, your understanding of this business, and knowing that when you head home on Saturday, exhausted for sure, you're going to take with you that immeasurably valuable knowledge that your writer's life is real, it's possible, and it can be richer and more rewarding than you even imagined it could be. It's all here for you. Everything you need to light that spark, or like in Steve's case, a raging bonfire under your copywriting career, to accelerate your success thanks to all the knowledge, resources, and newfound confidence you'll take home with you. And like so many others before you, live a rich and full writer's life. So, are you ready for this? Yes. All right. Wait. We're going to have to do this a little bit now. Because I need your word that you're going to do everything in your power to get the most out of these next 3.5 days. Because I'm not leaving. And virtual people too, I'm not leaving until every one of you makes that promise to me right now. So, we'll do this again. Are you ready? Okay, we can check that off the list. Everybody's ready. So, it all boils down to this. If you want to learn this business, we're going to help you. That's why we're here together now. If you let it happen, let me correct myself after that rousing yes, when you make it happen, because you are ready to make it happen, that's why you're here. When you make it happen, you will be a better, faster, and richer copywriter. And all of us, everyone on the AWAI team, every invited guest, and every AWAI member who has enjoyed copywriting success, we're all here to help you get better, get faster, get richer, until you're writing and succeeding at the highest level. With that, I say a heartfelt thank you from everyone at AWAI and all of our friends. Thank you for being here. Congratulations on your fantastic decision to be here. You're doing what 99 out of 100 people don't have the courage to do, and that's commit to making a change in your life. And for that, you have our utmost respect and admiration. So, let's get this amazing event started. Our keynote speaker, we go back 30 years. So it's so fun to see him again. But of our keynote speaker, Alexander Green, Paul Hollingshead has said, Alec is one of the purest, most persuasive financial newsletter writers I have ever read, and I read a lot of them. Every aspiring copywriter should read his work, and on the very rare occasion when he's willing to divulge his secrets, you should pay attention. And as you can see, Paul will be paying attention tonight. He's right back there. And we're all in for a treat tonight because Alec is going to divulge those secrets that have earned him 350,000 loyal weekly readers, a spot for his newsletter, the Oxford Communique, on Holbert Financial Digest's honor roll of the top 10 investment letters in the nation for the last 14 consecutive years. 4 national bestsellers, The Gone Fishing Portfolio, The Secret of Shelter Island, Beyond Wealth, and most recently, An Embarrassment of Riches, and a place in Agora's prestigious Copywriters Hall of Fame. Mark Ford said of Alec, he's more than a good writer. He's a student of writer. Few good writers can make claim to being both. In this next hour, Alec is going to give you a better understanding of what it takes to be an A-plus copywriter in any niche. He's going to give you a couple of shortcuts to get you there, get you to that level, a fuller realization of the incredible and inexhaustible demand that exists for you as a copywriter, and the piece de resistance, the one indispensable ingredient to write Hall of Fame quality copy. Please join me in welcoming Alexander Green.
Thank you, Katie, for that generous introduction, and thank you all for being here. I'm shocked. I had no idea how many people were going to be here. I was thinking maybe 100, 150 people, and to walk into a room, see all this energy, and you guys are a chatty bunch. I mean, when you started introducing, I thought we were going right into cocktail hour. I mean, you guys like to chat. I can't wait till the actual cocktail hour arrives, which is soon. But I'm also excited because copywriters are the engine that pull the train in the publishing business. In any business, nothing happens until somebody sells something, and the copywriters are the ones who create the sales that allow us to have the readers we have. And so I wouldn't have 350,000 weekly readers and 4 bestsellers and all the accolades that Katie was talking about if there weren't copywriters out there who was making it all possible. And I do want you to know that right off the bat, anybody who has the least bit of skepticism that there really could be this huge market for a job that pays 6 and even high 6-figure salary to people, it absolutely exists. I mean, we have lots of editors at Agora Publishing with lots of financial newsletters and trading services and other products that they're just, we can't get enough good quality copywriters. So that obviously means that copywriting isn't simple, but it's a craft that can be learned. You want to become an apprentice to some of the greats. I mean, you've got John Ford here and Paul Hollingshead. I mean, that's like learning golf from Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. I mean, these guys are the best. And they may seem modest and self-effacing, but these guys know exactly how copy works, how it's done, all the mechanics of writing great copy. So you want to spend the week listening to them, asking questions, get every bit of information you can out of them, and make it worth your while. Because even if you didn't become a professional copywriter, I mean, I hope you do, but even if you didn't, who wouldn't benefit from being a stronger communicator, which is all that good writing is? The way I look at it is anybody can write copy who can do 3 things, okay? You have to think clearly, you have to write plainly, and you have to be able to argue persuasively, okay? Now think about that. Think clearly. Now everybody likes to think that they think clearly, but, you know, I'm not going to even touch that one right now. But you got to think, write plainly, not beautifully, plainly. Write like you speak. But sometimes people try too hard. Write plainly and argue persuasively. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all those things. But what I thought I'd really start off by doing is when I came here 4 years ago, I told my story about how I became a writer and a copywriter and how it all happened. And I told my story in part because that's the only story I got is mine. But I also wanted to tell about my background because it's not that my background is so exceptional. If anything, it's really unexceptional. And that you don't have to be a journalism major or someone who took nothing but English classes in college or a straight A student or a Rhodes Scholar to be a writer. It's just simply not the case. I wasn't any of those things. And I'm going to tell you my story, and then I'm going to talk about these various points where I think you can become a stronger, more effective writer, whether you're a copywriter or just writing a business memo. And then I thought it would be so much more effective if rather than me standing up here and lecturing you about writing for an hour, if I turned it more into a dialogue. Because the last time I was here, I spoke for about 45 minutes, and then they took questions, and you had so many good questions, and by the time I was done, there were still people lined up to ask questions. And so I'm going to try to leave plenty of time at the end that you can ask the questions that you have, because I don't want to talk about what's on my mind. I want to talk about what's on your minds. So I'm looking forward to the give and take of the Q&A towards the end. So let me start my story, my tale of how I became a writer in college. I was a pretty good student in high school, but I went to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, a little small private liberal arts college. And when I was a freshman, my brother was a senior who was there on a full golf scholarship, and this guy would sooner lift a cinder block than a book. He was no student. His idea was to get through college with a 2.0001, and so he came by my dorm room the first week I'm there, and he goes, "Hey, we're all going out to Nickel Beer. You want to go?" And I go, "Well, I would, but I can't afford it." He goes, "You can't afford Nickel Beer?" There's a little place called the Knight's Inn that they sold the worst draft beer in these tiny cups for a nickel, but if you're a college student, that's nirvana. So I said, "I don't have any money." He goes, "Well, let me ask you this. Have you spent all the money that Dad gave you for those textbooks yet?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Those textbooks are expensive, and if you didn't buy the textbooks, you'd have a lot of money. And I'm sitting there thinking like, yeah. He goes, but I got to buy the textbooks. He goes, well, let me ask you, are you going to go on to graduate school when you finish college? I go, well, probably not. I'll go into business. He goes, well, then what difference does it make what your grade point average is? Take the textbook money. and to my 18-year-old brain, this is going like, this makes sense. And I tell you, if my dad was in this audience, I still would not be telling this story. I am so ashamed that I never, so I just took notes in college, never read the text, never bought the textbooks, never read them, and made B's and C's and finished my 4 years. So I wasn't any great scholar in school easily. So I'm having a meeting with the career counselor at Furman right before I leave, and she's asking me, like, what would you like to do? And I said, you know, it's funny, but I've always thought that I'd kind of like to be a writer. And she looks down at my transcript and she goes, I don't see anything here that indicate that you could be a writer. And then she went on to actually say that I had a better chance of playing third base for the Yankees than earning a living wage as a writer. And I said, well, what do you suggest? She goes, well, you should probably go into sales. And I go, sales? 4 years at a private, out-of-state liberal arts college, and you think I should go into sales? I was insulted. So I moved to Florida and went into sales. but not immediately. I started off, my parents must have been so proud of me after paying for all this college. I took a job waiting tables at a Bennigan's Tavern, okay? So I'm working nights, making nothing. I'm sharing an apartment with 3 other guys. I got no money, a beater car, no health insurance, no savings, no money to do anything. It's kind of like college, except they don't have nickel beer. And coming into Bennigan's were these young guys, and they had on these fancy suits, and they're driving BMWs, and they're throwing money around like they're printing in the basement. And I said, this is in Daytona Beach. I said, well, what do you guys do? What do you guys do for a living? They said, oh, we sell timeshares down on the beach. And I go, really? What's a timeshare? Yeah. So then, because this is 1980, I didn't know what a timeshare was. Of course, you all know now that a timeshare is a fractional interest in a resort condo that you can use or trade to different places, whatever. And they said, all you have to do is get a real estate license. You can come down, it's straight commission, but you'll sell enough that you'll make a lot of money. So I got my real estate license. I go down there, and I get the job selling timeshares. So they give me a little bit of training, and I get on the line, as they say. And what they would do is, of course, this is the craziest sales job in the world, because nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think we should buy a timeshare. That's not how the industry works. The way the industry works is they offer couples 2 free tickets to Disney, a dinner at the seafood restaurant, $10 silver or whatever. And then in return, you have to take a 90-minute tour. And so these people would come in on vacation, and they were very skeptical. I mean, they knew that they were coming to they were coming to a 90-minute sales presentation. And so we would meet them and tour the property and then try to get them to buy while they were there. Well, I found out that I was not a born salesperson, because at the end of the first month, I learned to my mortification that they ranked everybody by their sales each month, and I was at the very bottom. I was the worst salesperson at the entire resort. And so I knew that if I didn't do something, I was going to lose my job, because no one's going to keep the worst sales. Even if you're on straight commission, no one wants to keep the worst salesperson. So I started following around the guys at the very top salespeople at the resort. And those of you who've been in sales will know this. The difference between the average salesperson and a true master salesman is just night and day. The master salesman, they're not that they're great talkers. They're great listeners. They read body language. They're ingratiating. They're funny. A lot of these guys were hilarious. Some of them were dirt salesmen. They called themselves dirt salesmen. Used to sell land. One guy who was one of the top salespeople I worked with used to sell pre-sale burial plots. And I said, how do you do pre-sale burial? I said, what do you do at night when you go out and you meet women? They say, well, what do you do for a living? He goes, it's easy. I just tell them I'm in real estate. He goes, I had one just the other night. He goes, what kind of real estate? I said, subterranean. So they were so good, and I finally learned some of the intricacies of sales. And one of the first things I learned, but first, how many people here are either in sales or been in sales in the past? Just raise your hand here. Okay, so probably half of you. All right, sales is really an art, and copywriting is a form of sales. The difference is when you're selling someone face-to-face, you're getting a feeling. Are they nodding their head? Are they leaning in? Are they agreeing with what you're saying? With the copywriter, you've got to put it all in print. You don't get the feedback that you have in an ordinary sales process. But some of the same rules still apply. For instance, anybody who's been in sales knows that there's 5 if you're a student of selling, there's 5 objections that a prospect can have to your presentation that you have to overcome. Okay, now, if the sales 101 is that you've got a product or service and it has features and those features have benefits and blah, blah, blah. But then you get down to the part where you actually have to say yes or no, and it comes down to one of these. If it's no, it's because there's either no need, no desire, no urgency, no trust, or no money. So obviously if someone doesn't need it, then they're not going to buy your product. If they need it but they don't desire what you have, they're not going to buy your product. If they desire it and need it, but there's no hurry to buy it, then you still might not make the sale. If you have all those things and there's no trust, believe me, if there's no trust, nothing's ever happening in a sales process. And if there's no money, if someone can't afford it. So what you have to do is try to counter all those objections up front. And one of the things I learned, because I actually became very good at timeshare sales, and it's always difficult to sell an intangible. If you're on a car lot and someone comes in, they're at least thinking about buying a car, maybe even the kind of car that you sell if you're at a Ford dealership or a Mercedes dealership or what have you. But with intangibles, you have to create, whether it's stocks or bonds or timeshares, you have to create this image in someone's mind that they buy. And so it's a very difficult form of sale. And the thing that most people can't deal with who've been in sales, and those of you who have been in the sales process know this, you get to a certain part where you've made this presentation, you've talked about the features, you told them about the benefits, you showed them how affordable it is, and you get down to the moment of truth and they say, well, this is all great, but I have to think about it. Now, the average salesperson will do the exact wrong thing and they'll say, what is there to think about? It's got this, it's got that, that. Well, that's pressure. And people don't react well to pressure. I could never be a high-pressure salesperson, but I actually became a closer. One of the top, I would come in and close other people's deals at these resorts because I didn't high-pressure people. And I found out the perfect phrase, and you can feel free to borrow this if you're in sales, the perfect phrase to use with someone when they say, well, I have to think about it. Instead of saying, what do you have to think about? You say, okay, I understand. Well, let me ask you this. If you left and you took all the time you needed and you thought about it and you thought about it, you took weeks and weeks, and you decided ultimately that you weren't going to buy here after all, what would stop you from buying? Okay? Now, there's the interesting thing about that is it makes someone, because all the pressure's off of right now, they will actually give you the real objection because I have to think about it. It's not an objection, it's an excuse. If you're in sales, you have to turn an excuse into an objection. You can overcome objections. You can't overcome excuses. So then we'll say, well, we might ultimately decide that we can't afford it. I go, okay. Well, if you can't afford $400 a month, could you afford $250 a month? So now you've got something to play with. Or they might say, well, we can afford it, but we don't know if we're going to vacation every year and we could use it, blah, blah, blah. So, well, maybe then you can say, well, you can exchange at different places. You can deal with it. Now you're actually getting at what the true objection is, which you can't do when people are just making excuses. So as a copywriter, the interesting thing is you have to lay out the beauty of the product or service, what its features are, what its benefits are, but you have to also cover those objections in the course of it. So there is very much a sales component to the copywriting process because it is, copywriting is just selling in print. That's essentially what it is. And that's why there's an inexhaustible demand for copywriters because every industry has products and services they want to sell and they need copywriters to write this fresh, beautiful, creative copy to move things out the door. So that's why the demand is so strong. So anyway, I went from working in the timeshare industry. I was actually running a timeshare right on the 17th hole in St. Andrews, Scotland. And I came home for Christmas one year, and I was living in Orlando at the time when I was here. And there was an article on the front page of the Orlando Sentinel that says, average stockbroker in the U.S. makes $186,000 a year. And this is in 1985. And I looked at that. I read the article over and over again. Average stockbroker makes $186,000. I couldn't believe it. I tore out the article. I put it in my pocket. I was carrying around my wallet. And people would say, are you going to go back to Scotland? I said, well, I'm either going to go back to Scotland or I'm going to become a stockbroker. Well, I kept telling the story so often that I actually bumped into a woman who goes, I just sold a phone system to a guy with a stockbrokerage, and he says he's trying to hire brokers now. And I said, really? Well, I got his phone number, called him up. I went down there, and I said to him, very forthrightly, I said, look, I don't know a stock from a bond. I said, but I've got a strong background in sales, and I can sell intangibles, and I'm very much interested in becoming a stockbroker. He hired me right there on the spot. But just like real estate, you have to get a license to become a stockbroker. You have to take a Series 7 exam and pass the test, learn about stocks, bonds, options, etc. And I did that. So I started working as a stockbroker, and this was a tiny firm. There was 7 brokers, 2 secretaries, and a girl in the back office. Woman in the back office, sorry. Woman, can't say girls in the back office anymore. That's 90s talk or something. But anyway, so I got this job as a broker, and this is different where people say they needed some information, they needed to think about it. You had to say, well, I've got some research I'd send to you. But the problem was our firm was so small, we didn't have a research department. So I became the research department. I decided that I would write, I got the firm to get me a Mac and a laser printer, and I started creating the firm's research reports. And here's the crazy thing. Even though I did really well as a stockbroker, I became the firm's top producer, top of 7, big deal. But still, as the years went by, I was finding out that more and more that I liked doing the research more than I liked talking to clients. Because even though I didn't mind talking to clients, it was very repetitive. What's the market doing? How's my portfolio doing? Should we sell this and buy that? And all day long, the same sort of conversation, but it's very lucrative. So I'm writing these reports, and the business was, it's almost like the insurance business. If you're in the insurance business and you're writing homeowners policies and auto policies and people keep renewing them year after year, your business just grows and grows and grows. And when you're in the money management business, you have clients and you have assets and you have management fees rolling in. They keep compounding and compounding. So nobody leaves this business. But I was actually getting really bored with it because I had done it for 16 years. And one day, Steve Sugarroot at the Oxford Club called me up, and he said he had a position for me at the Oxford Club, or he said he was going to leave. And I said, well, I'd be very much interested in your job. He goes, oh, you don't want my job. I don't make nearly what you make. And I go, I don't care. I think I'd like to do what you're doing for a living. He goes, well, if you're serious, I'll recommend you. So I flew up, talked to Julia Guth, the publisher, and sure enough, she agreed to hire me. And I came back. I told my wife that day when she met me at the airport, she goes, how'd it go? I said, this is the first day of the rest of my life. I was so excited about it. I mean, you should be excited now, because if you become a full-time writer, it's not about, well, it is partly about the money. The money is great, but the real thing is the freedom. I mean, you get up when you want to get up. You work when you want to work. If it's rainy, you work. If it's sunny, you go out. If it's, like I have kids. My daughter's off at college now, but she played varsity volleyball and varsity tennis. I was there for every single game. My son now plays soccer and tennis, and I'm always there. And that's not just worth a loss. It's priceless. I mean, your time is your own. You can do what you want. That's the beauty of being a writer. So you have challenging work. But you also are your own boss, where you can work from where you want, when you want, doing what you want, and it's really a great lifestyle. But when I came to the Oxford Club, they were badly in need, as we are now, of copywriters. And I was sitting there in a meeting with Mark Ford, and he was telling Julia Guth, you need to hire some copywriters. You're too short of copywriters. And I said, what's a copywriter? I didn't know anything about this part of the industry at all. I thought a copywriter would be the person who secures the copyrights for the things that we publish. Not the deal. The legal department does that. So, Mark kind of weighs me off. He goes, no, we need a professional copywriter. And I said, no, I think I can do this. And he goes, why can you do this? And I said, well, I used to write a client newsletter for my firm, and when we'd put it out to the clients, they would call in and buy the stock I recommended. He goes, really? He goes, all right, well, you try to write this. So without any training, I didn't go to an AWAI course. I didn't have any training. Again, I'd only just found out what a copywriter was. What I did was I gathered up all the top performing promotions at Agora, and I looked at them and I went through them line by line, and just from a sales standpoint, I could see exactly what's going on. Here's the headline, here's the lead, here's the promise, here's the proof, here's the testimonials, here's the offer. I could see exactly. You should be able, by the time you leave here, you should be able to take a promotion and diagram it. You should say, okay, here's the lead. It's got to be urgent, useful, unique, and ultra-specific. Why ultra-specific? Because specific doesn't have a U in it. But that I tell you, the four U's. So I, without any training at all, I wrote a promo, as they call it, short for promotion. And Mark Ford invited me to his apartment in Baltimore. And he went through it with me line by line. I'm telling you, Mark Ford, like Paul Hollingshead and like John Ford, knows so much. And I listened to him, and everything he told me, I understood immediately. He told me that the writing should be invisible. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't draw attention to the writing. Don't get off track. You should focus like a laser. You've got one thing to do, and that's to present this and make it as easy as possible for the person to understand what you've got and to be able to buy it and so on. So he went through me, strike this out, put this in, whatever. That was the only sales training I ever got, okay? So we put this letter out there, and it makes $1 million the first weekend. I couldn't believe it, but here's why that seems astonishing. We were selling high-priced trading services for $1,000. Now, a trading service is something we deliver electronically by email with information about what stocks to buy and why to buy them and what price to buy them and so on. If you can get 1,000 people to buy a $1,000 product, that's $1 million. And Agora has a file of hundreds of thousands of proven buyers of financial newsletters. So they just took my promotion and they put it down the slot to all these people, and people just went nuts buying the product. I couldn't believe it. But here's the really strange part. I had signed a contract to be the chief investment strategist for the Auction Club. She had also had me sign what she called the standard copywriting contract. She said, this is the one everybody uses. Okay, so I signed it. So about 6 months later, she goes, oh, by the way, here's your bonus for writing that promotion. $118,000 for an 8-page letter. I go, what? I mean, I couldn't believe it was true because, of course, the letter is eight single-spaced pages. It's actually, the promotion was about 16 pages plus a few charts and graphs and things. You're not talking about a whole lot of copy being written. But here's the thing. As Rick Rule likes to say, Rick Rule's a resource analyst, he goes, you work in an industry where the bottom line is very close to the top line. Top line is sales, bottom line is profits. But you know what? Once you have the list, once you own the list, and you have the staff, and you own the buildings or whatever, it's really, the more you, our profit margins are huge. And so the copywriters get paid well, and when something sells an awful lot, as this ended up selling over a 6-month period, then they give you a very nice check. And so I was so excited, I created another trading service and another trading service after that. And it turned out that I wrote all the copy that promoted the Auction Club, all the copy for the 3 trading services that we had, and they became the controls. I don't know if you know what the term control means. Control means that was the promotion that outsold everything else. Everybody's trying to knock off the control and become the new control. So I had the controls for all these different things, and it was very lucrative. And I got to the point where Julie goes, you can't create any more stuff. Julie, me, my publisher. You can't create any more stuff because you can't do it all. And after a while, I was on a fast track to burnout because I have about 8 to 10. I have exactly 8 to 10 deadlines every week as it is now, and I was writing all this copy in addition to that. And then I wrote 4 books on top of that. So I was waking up on Monday mornings in a mild state of panic at how much I had to write. But I will say this, I can write really fast, and I mean that I can write really fast physically. In that the only class I've ever taken that there was any benefit to me as a writer at all was a typing class I took in high school. And let me just say, if you're one of those millions of people who is still out there like this, you can go online and take a free typing course. It costs you absolutely nothing and learn to type. You can tell me how fast you are going like this, but if you're looking, you've got to look down at the keyboard. I can type faster than most secretaries, and one of the reasons I'm able to just turn out as much output as I do is I can just really go fast. I'm a terror on the keyboard. So I encourage you, if you don't know how to type on a QWERTY keyboard right now, if you're really serious about becoming a professional writer, you have to learn how to type while you're looking at the screen, not at the keyboard. So it's essential. So anyway, I'm writing all these things, and it became so much that I simply couldn't write the copy anymore. And we now have a team of guys and gals who are writing all the copy for the Auction Club and doing an excellent job. We have one record year after another, but we would be doing so much more if we had more copywriters. And so I want to encourage you, again, if you can think clearly, and if you can write plainly, and if you can argue persuasively, you can be a copywriter. It's a skill that can be learned. So what I did is, when I was, in the last couple of weeks, as I was thinking about coming to this seminar, I was thinking about, like, what if I was a budding copywriter, what would I most want to hear? And I just wrote pages and pages and pages of notes. And then I was on the plane down here the day before yesterday, and I go, this is just too much. I'm not going to go over all the nuts and bolts of copy because because you're going to be learning lots of that this weekend. But I did come up with 10 things that I thought every copywriter should know. So I'm going to just briefly cover those 10 things, and then I'm going to also just read you along the way a couple of examples of what I call A-plus copy. A-plus copy is so good, you don't even know you're reading copy. It almost rises to the level of poetry, and I'll give you a couple examples in just a minute. All right, so number one, 10 things you have to do to be a successful copywriter. The first thing is the one thing that all writers do, and that is write. Write and write and write. And I say that because I've worked with some aspiring editorial and copywriters, and I have to remind them that you're not a writer if you're talking about writing, networking about writing, sharpening pencils, shopping for a laptop, doing research on the internet. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can get around doing the actual writing. And I often find that people, they want to be a writer, they want to have written, but actually sitting down and doing the writing, for some reason, they think that's really heavy lifting. And I hope you don't feel that way, because if you don't want to start off with writer's block, maybe you might get there at some point, but you should be willing and ready to write and write every day. And I suggest that you should write 1,500 words of finished copy a day. That's about 2 pages, single-spaced. You should sit down and try to do it every day and make it a persuasive essay. Now, you might think, like, well, what am I going to write about every day? You know what? You're writing a persuasive essay. Write about the best movie you ever saw, the most fantastic trip you ever took, the most beautiful woman you ever met. And don't use great or fantastic or beautiful. You know, go into all the details, persuade someone this really was the best trip. This really was the most fantastic meal I ever had. So you want to go into all the specific details, and it'll kind of get you the gears turning of what you have to do as a writer of persuasive essays, which is what copywriting is. All right, number 2, the second thing that all successful copywriters have to do is check your ego, okay? Now, that's not an easy thing to do for anybody, really, but it's really tough for writers, because when you think about it, when you say, I want to be a writer, not a copywriter, but just someone who wants to be a novelist or a playwright or a poet or whatever, you're basically saying that I've got something to say that's so good, I want everybody to see it and enjoy it and applaud it and whatever. Of course, online now, they can also reject it quite readily, too. You don't always just get pats on the back in today's writing world. But the reason you have to check your ego is because, remember, the idea when you're writing copy is not to draw attention to yourself, not to draw attention to your words, which is exactly what you're trying to do if you're writing a beautiful literary novel or something. You've got to get out of that mode of thought. You are a hired gun, just like a lawyer takes on a client, and your job is not to see things objectively, it's to see things from your client's point of view and to argue the best case you can possibly make. And so you have to think in terms of the writing just being a vehicle to get across an idea. All right, or as Mark Ford said, the writing should be invisible. You don't remember the words. You just get this. You get the sensation. You get the impression. You get the idea. So you have to check your ego to be a successful copywriter. Thirdly, is you have to get sold before you start writing. Now, by that I say, I'm talking mostly about writing financial letters because that's really my area of expertise. But Agora has a health division that sells supplements and diet aids and medical devices and all kinds of things. But no matter who you're working for, you have to be sold on what it is that you're going to be selling, or you're not going to be able to transfer any emotion to your prospects. And for that reason, I suggest that you not take on any copywriting assignments where you just can't see the benefit of it. You don't really see the value in it yourself, because it's the editor's job to get you totally convinced that this investment system, this trading service, this particular special report is really worth what they're charging for it. And you should be skeptical. You should ask them, why this service? Why not this other service? Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? I mean, what's the downside risk? What's the upside potential? You should really pester them. And you should feel completely satisfied, not like, well, I guess so. Because I guess so is you'll never get the excitement across to the prospect. Because here's the thing about copywriting. You have to strike a certain tone. I'm going to get more into this in a second, but you have to strike a certain tone, a positive tone, in order to convince the prospect. And so you need to make sure that you're completely sold on the product or service before you start writing copy. And I'll tell you a story of something Paul Hollingshead did once. He may not remember this, but I had an idea for a new trading service based just on China stocks. And he goes, and Paul said he would write the copy for it. I said, great. Paul Hollingshead, I'm a guaranteed bestseller. So Paul goes, okay, sell me, pitch me on this. And I said, well, here's the idea. There's this conversation took place about 10 years ago. So there's 1.3 billion people in China. And the walls are coming down. They're converting from a state-run economy to a free market economy. They're deregulating. They're bringing down taxes. And all these people, for the first time in their lives, are incentivized. They can start a business. And the mantra over there, I went to China, and I can tell you the people there said, you get educated, get a job, and get rich. That was the mantra over there. And the people in China were, all the things that we take for granted, they were all out to get. They wanted houses and cars and phones and credit cards and health insurance and golf clubs and everything else that we want, they wanted to get. And I just thought, like, this is the biggest economic development story in the history of the world. This is back, China's growing at 10% a year, outpacing everyone else. I couldn't be more excited. I called up Paul a couple weeks later and said, how's that China promo come along? He goes, it's not. I said, why not? He goes, I don't get it. I can't get excited about it. I said, why not? I told you the story. I mean, this is the biggest economic development story in the world. He goes, yeah, but wasn't the biggest economic development story last year? Weren't there 1.3 billion people there last year? Weren't they? I mean, he was right. He wasn't sold. It ended up I had to write the promotion in the end. And you know what? It didn't even do very well. Maybe because I didn't write as good a copy as Paul would have. But a lot of Americans are kind of resentful of the Chinese and eating our lunch, and a lot of times it just didn't do well at all. And Paul was right. He's an A-plus copywriter. If he wasn't sold on the idea, he had no business wasting his time even getting started. And so he saved himself a lot of time. So make sure you get sold on the product or service before you sign up to write copy for anybody. Another thing I think that copywriters should strive for is what I call perfect pitch. And here's how I would describe that. You know, after 9/11 and after the cleanup, I went to New York City and I wanted just to stop by the site. And I'm standing there and you get kind of a lump in your throat. And then from off in a corner behind me, this guy on a flute starts playing Amazing Grace. And he just played it so slow and so mournful and so perfect. That guy must have made $1 million that year because he had a hat in front of him and just like throwing money in there. It was just, he actually made the experience. And if he had hit a wrong note, you know, like, I'm not going to sing for you Amazing Grace, but you know, every tone of that piece. And if he didn't hit the perfect tone, it just wouldn't have been effective. The thing about copywriting is it has to be credible and it has to be exciting. And you have to walk a fine line. If it's so credible that it's not exciting, that's not good. If it's so exciting that it's not credible, that's not good. And so you really have to develop what I said, like a perfect pitch. You know, you're using the right diction, you're using the right phrases, you're using the right arguments. And this comes easier to some people than others. You know, it's funny, I was at the Marriott in Baltimore a few weeks ago. I go up there on business occasionally, and I was having a glass of wine at the bar, and there's this woman sits down next to me, this attractive woman, and this guy comes over from across the bar, and he goes, hey, I'm Bill. And she goes, hey, I'm Jenny. He goes, hey, Jenny, I just saw you from across the bar and standing here, and I thought I'd come over and say hello and buy you a drink. And I thought, like, wow, that was easy. And he goes, what are you drinking? She goes, I'm having a Tanqueray and tonic. And he goes, bartender, would you bring this lady another Tanqueray and tonic, please? And I'm sitting there going, like, I can't believe how easy this is. You know, the guy, I mean, it was just nothing. And then he says, are you a model? Oh, and you can, she puts her glass down. I'm not a model. You know, I mean, it's like the wrong thing to say. He was doing so well. And you And you could have the same thing. You could be writing copy and you're just going along, and then on page 3, ooh, you know, it gets bad. But you have to have perfect pitch. And let me just tell you, when you're writing copy, your headline and your first couple of pages are like, if you're a musician, you put out a greatest hits album, all your greatest hits are right there in the first couple of pages. Don't ever think you're going to build up to something great on pages 8 and 9. It's all got to be there. You know, if Elton John wrote copy, he would have to have Goodbye Yellow Brick Road on the lead, Candle in the Wind, Benny and the Jets, you know, and then maybe right at the offer he could do Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting or whatever. But you put all your best stuff in there. And I even find with professional copywriters, I'm looking at their stuff, and there's this sort of, like, we call it warm-up copy in the business. They start kind of slow, like I'm getting to something, and all that just has to go. Let me just tell you, as a writer, the delete key is your best friend. You know, Stephen King used to say, kill your darlings. You know, all that stuff you think is just perfectly phrased and just right, a lot of times it just has to go. You've got to get right into the action, all the best stuff, right up front. That's how good copy sells. You have to remember, your prospect who's reading your copy is looking for a reason to go, that's it, I've read enough. bore me for 1 minute, say one thing I really don't agree with, I'm gone. You have to hold their attention, and they have to be going, yeah, this is good, the whole way through. And you do that by striking the right tone. All right, you have to also understand that writing is really the art of rewriting. And I suggest that there's various phases of writing copy. The first thing you do is you sit down with the person you're going to be writing for. They have a product or service to sell. You want to find everything you can out about that product and service. You want to take copious notes. You want to look at the old promotions that have been used to promote it. You want to find out everything you can, and then you're going to get on the internet and start doing research. And you are so fortunate to be aspiring writers in the era of the internet, because I used to write research reports for this brokerage firm decades ago, and I used to go to the stacks in the library and try to dig things out. And the internet is like going back to school and finding that every exam is an open book test. It's all there somewhere if you can just find it. So you can get very good at going to different websites and finding what you need. And I always say that what you want to do is collect bullet points. As you go through reading things, here's a great fact. Cut it out. Copy and paste it on a separate page. Copy, paste, copy, paste. And the amazing thing is, I don't even know how this happens psychologically, but as you start researching, doing the research for a promotion, a story is going to start to form in your head just because you're looking at the facts and you're thinking about them. And incidentally, I really suggest that you not work on more than one promotion at a time. If you start spreading yourself too thin with more than one, it diffuses your energy. If you keep thinking about this and thinking about it and researching it, the story will start to happen in your head, and you get to the point where you're almost itching to get it down. So then, when you have all your bullet points and you have the story in your head, my suggestion is you get everything down as fast as it can. Don't worry about your punctuation. Don't worry about your grammar. Just get it down as much as you can, as fast as you can, because you're going to go back and really, writing is the art of rewriting. You're going to go back and strike stuff out and clarify things and give more examples and so on. And it's almost like polishing a stone. You're writing it, every time you go through, it gets a little better and a little better and a little better. And all great writers do this. And one of my favorite writers, who I think is actually the best financial writer in the business, is a guy named Jim Grant. Anybody know who Jim Grant is? He's written a number of books and he writes for the Wall Street Journal. But every time I see a byline that has Jim Grant on it, my heart actually, this is the way writers think, my heart starts to leap because I know I'm going to read something really good. He's that good of a writer. And I was at a conference in New York, or New Orleans, and I'm going through the buffet, and who should be right in front of me at the salad bar but Jim Grant? I go like, oh, wow, it's Jim Grant right there. And so I went up to him, and I started gushing. I said, Jim, I've been a big fan of yours. I've been reading your stuff for a long time. I said, I don't know how your investment advice has worked out, but I can tell you one thing. You're a beautiful stylist. I'd love to read your stuff. He goes, you want to know my secret? He's going to give me a secret right here at the buffet in New Orleans? I said, yeah. He goes, the 17th draft is usually better than the 16th. But you know what? That was a very concise way of saying that, he gets it that right because he goes over it, over and over it. So you have to do the same thing. Make the 17th draft better than the 16th. Another point as a copywriter, do not try to reinvent the wheel. You know what? We've been writing copy at Agora for decades. It's a science. It's a craft, as I said. A lot of copywriters, they get all excited. I'm going to do something nobody's ever done before. It's going to be fabulous. It's going to be new. I'm telling you, don't fall prey to this, because Agora is a great entrepreneurial company, but another way of saying that is they will give you enough rope to hang yourself. They will let you do this crazy new thing that no one's ever thought would work before, and it won't work, I'm telling you. What you want to do is, copywriting is formulaic. You really want to go through and make sure you have all the elements of a good package, and you want to be mentored by somebody. Think of yourself as an apprentice to a master copywriter who's going to be looking at what you write during the process. Believe me, you don't want to turn in finished copy without having someone look at along the way and tell you, no, you're getting off track here, you need more of this, you need less of that. You need to make sure you're working with somebody who is truly giving you the feedback you need, because you need to be sticking to proven formulas of success in copywriting. And I say this in part because we had a copywriter who, he came with this idea a few months ago that he was so inspired by a talk that I gave that he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have these videographers, they're going to come to your house, they're going to come to your office, they're going to ride with you in your car, and you're just going to talk, and we're going to turn it into a promotion. I go, No way is that going to work. And they go, oh, no, you're selling yourself short. You're very persuasive. We'll get you on camera, blah, blah, blah. So they come to my house for 2 days. We were driving around the neighborhood. They got a camera bolted to the passenger seat. The guy in the back seat asking me questions. He's filming me. I'm driving around. It was the biggest waste of time, and it completely bombed, which you should be happy to hear, because if people could just talk off the cuff and you could have award-winning copy, who needs copywriters, you know? It just goes to show how valuable the skills of a copywriter are. Point number 7, you want to make an important $5 investment. There's a book called The Elements of Style by Strunk and White, William Strunk and E.B. White. And I don't know if writing can be taught completely, but what can be taught is in this book. It is 105 pages of solid gold, and I hope you can afford it. It's on Amazon right now for $4.68. So it's The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. Strunk and White. You want to prioritize your day. You want to get up in the morning and start writing immediately. I tell the story. I was very fortunate in that John Wiley & Sons came to me with an offer for me to write a book. And I'd always thought, like, I'd love to write a book, but I was always heard about authors getting rejected and all the collecting rejection notices. And they said, well, no, we know you've got a big audience, and we're willing to sign a contract. I said, what do you want to write about? Oh, you can write about whatever you want about, and we know your audience will buy the book, which they did. And they gave me a $50,000 advance, and then they said, we'll have royalties and so on. So I'm so excited. I'm like walking on a cloud. And as the weeks go by, I'm so busy. I got, again, 8 to 10 deadlines a week. I got trips. I got talks to give. I got conference calls and meetings. And I could never get around to the book. And so Deborah Englander, my publisher, called, and she goes, are you going to meet your deadline for the book? I said, I think you need to push it back. I'm not going to make it. So she pushed it back a couple more months. And the same thing was happening. I wasn't getting anything done on the book. So I kept trying to think I was going to get all my stuff done, and I was going to work on the book. And Mark Ford, I bumped into him at a company event. He goes, what are you working on? I said, well, I should be working on a book, but I'm not getting around to it. I just can't find the time for it. He goes, you want to get the book done? I said, yeah. He says, here's what you have to do. First thing every day, write for 30 minutes on that book. He goes, every day, first thing. He goes, now sometimes you'll get a tailwind. You'll write for an hour, 2 hours, and you'll get a lot done. Other days, 30 minutes is all you can get in, but you've got to write 30 minutes every day. I said, oh, thanks, Mark. Went right back, couldn't get it done. Publisher called. She goes, are you going to send us back the advance? I'm going like, oh, my gosh. So just out of sheer dread, I finally did what Mark told me to do. And this is the most amazing piece of advice I think I've ever gotten in my life. Just making it my first priority every day, but there was no excuses. Sometimes I had to get up a half an hour earlier. Sometimes I had to put things off. And after a few weeks, I could see the book taking shape, and it sort of took on a life of its own, had some momentum. I got it all done, and the book turned out to be a New York Times bestseller. And I never would have done it if Mark hadn't told me to make it the first thing I do every day. So you should write every day. And I will add one last part to the story. I ran into Mark at the company Christmas party the next year, and I said, you know, Mark, I got to tell you, that little piece of advice you gave me was so valuable. I could never get the book done without you. And he goes, oh, I'm glad to hear it. He goes, so what are you doing first thing every day now? I said, oh, the book's finished. I'm not doing anything. He goes, nothing else you really want to accomplish? I go, all of a sudden it was like I got an arrow through the forehead. All the other things that I could have been doing. So now I'm learning a piano piece for 30 minutes. I'm reading the history of the world for 30 minutes. 30 minutes a day, make it your priority. That's what's important. Another thing I'm a big advocate of, people like to multitask. I think you should unitask. Now, everybody thinks that when they're multitasking, they're getting more things, more done in less time. The person who's texting and coming into your lane thinks that they're getting 2 things done at once. They're not, and we really don't do anything better that way. I actually had an embarrassing incident last week. I was on a conference call with 12 other people. Problem is, with 12 people on a conference call, everybody's got to say something for 3 or 4 minutes, so it drags on and on. And so I thought I would just listen in on speakerphone and pay my bills electronically. So I'm going through and I'm listening and I'm paying a bill, listening. And that gets to my insurance company. I go, they double billed me here. And I looked at this, and next thing you know, my publisher, Julie Guth, goes, Alec, what do you think about that idea? No idea what anybody was talking about. It was so embarrassing, But that's when we start multitasking, that's what happened. As a writer, you should be focused like a laser on what you're writing. And here's what I mean. You aren't going to like this, but I'm telling you, if you're serious about writing, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to be a unitasker. You're going to put a do not disturb sign on the door. You're going to turn off the TV. You're not going to play any music. Some people say, well, I love music. That's why you shouldn't be listening to it. If you hated it, you could probably be okay. But you're not going to have your smartphone on the desk. I'm telling you, There's people texting you and tweeting and emailing you and calling you. You cannot be a writer and be picking up the phone every 15 seconds. I know this. My daughter in high school, she was a great student until she got her first smartphone, and we learned the hard way that she could not concentrate on her studies and have that phone in her room at the same time. And as a writer, you can't be multitasking. You really need, writing is a solitary activity. You need to shut out the world and do what you need to do. And the one secret of A-plus copywriters, which I've tried to do today, is you don't want to tell people about the product. You want to show them. The secret of A-plus copywriters is they tell a story and they let the facts speak for themselves. If you're rushing to the thesaurus to find another synonym for great and fabulous and outstanding and incredible, you are so far off track. You want the facts to speak for themselves. And I was going to actually read some fantastic A-plus copy to you, but I'm not going to be able to do the Q&A if I go there now. And you're going to hear lots of great copy this week. He's going to give me the hook here in a few minutes. So let me just tell you, let me answer the question that's probably in the back of all your minds. Can you do this? Okay, now, you're going to find out if you can do it. I don't want to make it sound like copywriting is easy, it's simple. It's not. It can be tough work, but it's not rocket science. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to write copy. But you do have to apply yourself. And I want to tell you, I was at lunch a few years ago with a friend of mine, and we were having lunch at this restaurant because his son, who was a college graduate, was the waiter. And he goes, "Isn't this pitiful? He's a smart kid. He's waiting table," just like I was doing, out of college. And he goes, "Do you know anything he could do, anywhere he could work?" I said, "Well, he could write copy for Agora." "Really?" I said, "Well, he can try. I mean, I can certainly get him to try to write copy for Agora, but only we'll find out whether he can do it or not." Okay, well, that was a few years ago. It turned out his son, his first copy was kind of rough, but it was also pretty good. And then it got better, and then it got better. And then he became the best copywriter for the Oxford Club. Then he became the head of the copywriters. And now he oversees all of our copywriters, does the hiring and training. His name is Todd Skousen. He was waiting tables, doing nothing. And it turned out he had a great knack for it. And it wasn't even his suggestion. We said, "Hey, Todd, you want to try this?" "Sure." So I'm telling you, it's not impossible, but it's not easy. If you're here to learn from the greats, and I can only say that I wish you incredible success because we sure could use you. All right, thanks so much.
Could you tell us if the 17th is better than the 16th? How do you know when to quit?
I knew that was coming. I was listening to the executives at Pixar one time. It says we never actually release our movies, they escape. And it's tough. You can get carried away because writers tend to be very obsessive and not want to let things go. But you have to remember that you're not writing for the Pulitzer Prize or the National Book Award. You're writing a piece of marketing copy. And especially when you start off, they'll let you know when it's good enough. The question is it effective? Are you hitting all the basics that they're giving? Is the headline strong? Is the lead persuasive? Is the evidence there? Are the testimonials good? Is the offer compelling? You can't, right now, I'm probably using a lot of jargon that you may not even understand, but it's a craft, and the people that you're going to be, who are going to be mentoring you will tell you, it's reached the point where you don't have to work on this anymore. It's turned over to a copy editor for a final polishing, and you're on to something else. And believe me, you'll want to be on to something else because that'll be another paycheck, so that's a good thing.
To be a successful financial copywriter, how much actual financial knowledge do you really have to know?
Okay, well, that's a good question, and let me just say, the more you know, that's better, but you don't have to be as knowledgeable as you might think. A lot of people out there who buy the trading services newsletters, all they know is if they buy a stock at 10 and it goes to 20, they'll be glad they bought it. They don't really know. And not only that, but those of us who are in the industry say, "Wow, look at this stock. It trades for 8 times earning, half of book value, it's got a dividend." I mean, that goes over a lot of people's heads. So from the fact that you don't know that much about investing can actually be a benefit. I can tell you that this Todd Skousen who came on board had never traded a stock in his life, didn't know anything, and it depends on, you've got to be, you've got to apply yourself, you've got to read about the industry. It helps if you're a quick study, it helps if you've traded stocks or at least managed your 401k in the past or done something, but it's not insurmountable if you've got no investment experience at all. And the same writing for health. You might not know anything about vitamins or minerals or supplements or whatever, but you still might be very good if you apply yourself and learn what you can.
Thank you. About your advice to prioritize your day,
Is there a time of day that is better for writing? Is there a time of day that is not so good for writing?
Well, that's a personal thing, but I can tell you, I just happen to be a morning person, and so if you're a night person, maybe you can do most of your writing at night. To me, it's a blessing to be a morning person because there's so many other things going on at night, football games and movies and dinners out and so on, that if you're a night writer, I think it'd be a tough thing to do. But I've gotten into a mindset now where I can't even go out and enjoy myself unless I've hit at least one deadline and maybe two. I just have too many deadlines. And I think that to get up in the morning, and to me, it's to have coffee, read the paper, check all the news, and then just launch into it. And Jack London, the famous novelist, once said that I don't wait for inspiration. I go out looking for it with a club. And that's how you should feel. Is you shouldn't wait for the mood to strike. That's why I want you want to get into the habit of writing every day. And if you say, I'm just not feeling it, then that's when you really have to sit down and just keep writing until because something will start to come. You can only look at a blank screen so long before you start wanting to fill it up. And again, if you're writing about the best date you ever had, or the Allman Brothers' greatest live album of all time, or whatever it is that turns your crank, then you can write a persuasive essay. But you have to I can't emphasize enough, don't think you're going to write in a couple of days or next week or whatever. Start writing now. Write every day. Write 1,500 words a day, and get in the habit of writing, because that's as I said, is the one thing all writers do. You have to write. If you can do it in the morning, that's been my experience. I'm a morning person. I write until lunch, take a break, write some more, and then I'm done. At 2 o'clock, I am done. But let me tell you, writing is like sprinting. You can't do it all day long. It'll just fry your brain. So you work intensively for as long as you can. Take a break, take a walk, have lunch, come back, write some more. And then as soon as you start to feel like you had enough, then you give it up for the day. That's been my schedule. You might do it differently if you're a night owl. I'm not a night owl, so I can't explain how that rhythm might work. So good luck to you. Are you a morning person or evening?
Both.
You're going to crank out a lot of copy.
Okay. One more question.
Hey, Alex, I'm Chris. I actually work with an Agora affiliate. I didn't know that you'd written successful copy promotions either, but it sounds like you've done copy, but you've also written best-selling books.
Right.
I'm just curious, how do you switch between copy and prose? They're very different animals. How do you flip that switch?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know a lot of people who share your view, but I don't. I think that the clear, compelling language, whether you're writing an editorial, whether you're writing marketing copy, is the same. The difference is, we all know that when it comes to marketing copy, it tends to be a bit hyperbolic. So it's like you ratchet up the energy, you ratchet up the subjectivity, you ratchet up the excitement a little more for marketing copy than you do for editorial copy. And the truth of the matter is, copywriters go over their material much more than editorial writers do, because, like for instance, when I'm writing a stock trading service, I know that in the end what people really want is, give me a stock, give me a symbol, let me go out and buy it. That's what they want. They don't want to hear a whole lot of extra stuff. But as I was talking about with the perfect pitch with copy, every single line has got to advance you toward that final goal of being persuasive. And being persuasive is not getting someone to nod their head. Being persuasive is they get out their credit card and they start putting it in the computer. That's the art of persuasion. So while some people would think that editorial and copy are just two completely different things, I think that good, clear writing is good, clear writing no matter what the end objective is. So anyway.
Awesome. We're done. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alec Green, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.